Welcome to the debate from GiltEdge.uk. Before we begin, this content is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. Always do your own research and consider seeking independent financial advice before making any investment decisions. Your capital is at risk. Today, the Challenger and the Guardian go head-to-head on raising the state pension age to 68 is the most honest thing any government could do. Let's get into it.
The state pension costs £124 billion a year, funded by a shrinking working-age population supporting a growing retired population. Raising the age to 68 isn't cruel, it's the most basic arithmetic any government could do.
Arithmetic that conveniently ignores the fact that healthy life expectancy for men in the northeast is 59.1 years. You're asking a bricklayer in Sunderland to work 9 years past the point his body has already given out.
I'm not ignoring it, I'm saying we need targeted support for those workers, not a blanket policy that lets a desk-bound management consultant in Surrey retire at 66 on the taxpayer's dime.
But that targeted support doesn't exist, does it? There's no mechanism for it. What exists is a universal age that hits the most physically broken workers hardest.
So build the mechanism. Denmark already links pension age to life expectancy and has hardship provisions. The answer isn't to freeze the age and pretend demographics haven't changed.
Demographics have changed, sure, but not the way you think. Life expectancy improvements have stalled since 2011. The ONS data shows men gained barely any additional years in the last decade. The trend you're projecting forward has already flatlined.
Even with the stall, a 65-year-old man today can expect 18.3 more years of life. That's 50% longer than when the system was designed. You can't run a pension system on a 1940s retirement length with a 2026 population pyramid.
Years of life isn't years of health. A third of those extra years are spent in poor health, unable to work. You're not extending working life, you're extending the misery gap between when someone's body fails and when the state finally steps in.
Then let's talk about what happens if we don't raise the age. The OBR projects pension spending hitting 8% of GDP by the 2070s. Either taxes go up massively on younger workers, or benefits get cut. Which do you prefer?
I prefer the alternatives that never get discussed, scrapping the upper earnings limit on national insurance, for instance. Why does someone earning £200,000 pay the same national insurance as someone earning £50,000 above the threshold?
Because that's a tax rise on productive workers to avoid an honest conversation about retirement age. You're just moving the burden from one generation to another.
No, I'm moving the burden from a warehouse worker whose knees are gone at 55 to a hedge fund manager who won't notice the difference. That's not generational theft, that's basic fairness.
Fair enough on the hedge fund manager, but the numbers don't add up with national insurance reform alone. The dependency ratio is moving from 3.3 workers per retiree to under 2.5. You need structural change, not just tax tweaks.
Here's what else doesn't add up, the jobs. Over 50s already face rampant age discrimination in hiring. A quarter of people approaching state pension age aren't in work. Raising the age to 68 doesn't create employment, it creates a longer stretch on universal credit.
That's a labor market problem, not a pension age problem. We should be fixing age discrimination and retraining, not using the pension system as an expensive workaround for a broken jobs market.
Should be, yes. But we're not. And in the meantime, real people fall into the gap. Theresa Via's own review acknowledged that acceleration to 68 would disproportionately harm women, ethnic minorities, and disabled people. These aren't abstractions.
I agree those groups need protection. But the triple lock already means the state pension rises by the highest of inflation, earnings, or 2.5% every year. Pensioners' incomes have been outpacing working-age incomes for over a decade. At some point you have to ask who's really being squeezed here.
The full new state pension is £11,973 a year. That's below the poverty line for a single pensioner. Don't talk to me about pensioners living the high life when 1 million of them can't afford to heat their homes.
I'm not saying they're living the high life. I'm saying the system needs to be sustainable to protect those very people. If the pension fund collapses under demographic pressure, it's the poorest pensioners who suffer most.
On that we actually agree. But sustainability doesn't have to mean making exhausted people work longer. It could mean sovereign wealth funds, it could mean auto-enrollment reform, it could mean actually taxing wealth instead of taxing years of labor.
A sovereign wealth fund takes 30 years to mature. Auto-enrollment helps future retirees, not the current funding gap. These are complementary reforms, not alternatives to raising the age.
And raising the age is a blunt instrument that treats a city lawyer and a care home worker as if they've had the same working life. Until you can means test by occupation, by region, by health, you're punishing the people who've done the hardest graft.
Every pension system in the developed world is moving in this direction: the Netherlands, Australia, Denmark, Germany. Are they all wrong, or is the UK just allergic to honest conversations about aging?
Those countries also have far better occupational pensions, stronger disability systems, and actual retraining infrastructure. You can't import the pension age without importing the safety net.
Then let's import both. But step 1 is acknowledging that a retirement age set when most people died within a decade of leaving work cannot hold when they're living 2 decades past it.
Step 1 is acknowledging that people is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. Wealthy, southern, professional people live 2 decades past retirement. Working class people in post-industrial towns often don't make it to 68 at all.
Which is exactly why I support a flexible system with earlier access for those in physical jobs and poor health. But a universal freeze at 66 helps the comfortable far more than the vulnerable.
A flexible system that doesn't exist yet versus a pension age rise that's already legislated. Forgive me if I don't trust the safety net to arrive before the cliff edge does.
The demographic maths don't wait for perfect policy. We either raise the age with protections built in, or we watch the system become unaffordable and everyone loses, especially the poorest.
And I say the richest country in Europe can afford to let a care worker retire at 66 without pretending the money doesn't exist. It exists, it's just not being asked from the right people.
The Challenger, The Guardian, thank you both. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. Read both articles in full at gilt-edge.uk. Thanks for listening to the debate.